Hello and welcome to the Alamos Area Moment. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Brad Hathcock. Welcome back, Aaron.
Glad to be back. It's been a little while. We think we have our audio issues figured out, but we're not gonna know. It looks okay so far.
Well, did you get to watch the solo broadcast?
I've seen one of them. Well, I saw it because remember you told me that I was kidnapped under the Denver International Airport, and then I don't remember if that was before or after we recorded with Dan, but it's been a while.
So you didn't go back and watch the one that I just did, but I did not publish yet for all those
Hmm.
out there. I'm giving you carte blanche publishing rights to that one.
Oh boy. Okay.
Whether or
Well,
not you want to release it is up to you.
are you gonna do the video?
It'll just be a hidden episode. Yeah, I mean, I would upload the whole thing. If you want to upload it, then we'll upload the whole thing. Full stop.
Ah, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Fucking send it. All right. I
Yeah.
do got to edit it. The first like minute or so, definitely needs to be cut out.
If anybody knows anything about cutting out parts of podcasts, it's me. So the last one I did, where I just put me and Dan's interactions in it, I must have made 25 cuts. It was a lot.
Wow.
But honestly, like I listened to Dan's conversation. Hi Dan, if you're listening to this. And I really enjoyed his perspective on everything. And I feel like it would have been a wasted opportunity if we didn't like preserve some of it.
Him and I have always been on a pretty like similar wavelength for like everything. He was a little bit more religious and stuff like that growing up than I ever was. But he's got a pretty solid perspective. Like he's very grounded.
I
Growing up and like
mhm.
as difficult as he's had it growing up, like it's given him this very grounded perspective because he's very much one of these like I will not quit type people. And physical, I mean, like for physical stuff that like he struggled with growing up, he just was like, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to like bust my ass. I Unfortunately, I did tell you on that podcast, but obviously all my audio and everything got cut out. Like I've watched that motherfucker take headers, like just falling out of cars, like all kinds of shit. Because he grew up on crutches and stuff, and like seeing him for 6 months, 7 months at a time in a wheelchair, like that shit's tough, man. I mean, we got matched up together. We were in the same homeroom in like sixth grade, and they asked for somebody to help him with the caveat that they would actually get to leave class a few minutes early to help walk to the next class and like carry his bag. And like everybody wanted to do it, and like they all raised their hand except for me. I was just like, eh. And I didn't know him. Like I didn't know him, but he picked me basically because I didn't want to do it, and we became best friends, man. I mean, I've known him a very long time, and like I said, he's just always been like inspiring and grounded. And we haven't always like stayed in touch, but I don't if like there's always this friend that you have where you're not always in contact with each other. 10 years could pass without you ever seeing each other, but when you meet up again, you never skip a beat.
I I have a friend who fits that exact definition. I've seen him and we talk almost every day, but um we don't really see each other in person very often, maybe like every few years or even more than that. But what's sadder to me is that there are friends that I was friends with in high school that I thought were like great friends that we would have that long term relationship, and then for I guess whatever reason, whether it was he moved to Arizona, or this person got married, or this person just had issues with uh, other things, they just dropped me. Like they decided not to be friends with me. It wasn't me not being friends with them, or they ended that relationship, or they never even thought about it. Maybe they never even considered it. But I also want to say the one friend that I do from high school that I do seriously still talk to all the time. I love that sort of when you're a kid, you meet somebody at school or whatever, and then you just end up for whatever reason, the fate lines up, and then you're like friends with this person for like the rest of your life. And I have a friend like that where we couldn't have been more different. We came from completely different walks of life. He's Filipino. I'm obviously white as hell, and I guess we both liked Pokemon, and maybe there was I bought an N64 game from him, and then that was it. And then it led to a lifelong friendship. It's really crazy.
Hey, it happens in different ways, obviously for different people, and
Kind of
I
happened to
never.
us.
Right. I mean, you and I met via text message and like playing video games and stupid like Snapchat calls and things like that. And then we've met one time physically and it was awesome. It was fun. We had a good time in Austin, Texas, for my bachelor party. We generally had a good time, I guess. Um, and
I had a good
I'm
time.
looking forward to getting to see you. Like, I definitely plan at some point to come out to California, and I know for the listeners out there, Aaron is going to come see me in Pittsburgh to go see the Offspring play with Simple Plan and Sum 41.
Yeah, I'm actually excited because I love Sum 41, and I love The Offspring, and there's bands I haven't been able to see, and I'm sad because I might never see them. Metallica's definitely on that list, but Offspring definitely is also on the list as well, and those guys are getting up in age. I actually just read Red Hot Chili Peppers were on 60 Minutes. Those dudes are all in their 60s now. It's
Yeah.
wild.
I just recently went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and for my 1 year wedding anniversary, we went to Cleveland and we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's wild, man. There's, I mean, video of the Rolling Stones and like who that Mick Jagger,
Yes.
Keith Richards, which yeah, like he's still out there like doing the fucking thing. Like, I mean, at that age with that many drugs, and like they had some of his clothing from like maybe one of the tours he was on or something, and the waist is like, I don't know, the size of like a Coke can. It's so fucking small, and you're like, how could this guy be that thin? And it's all the drugs, obviously, but I mean, they're still out there. Like the Rolling Stones are still out there, kicking ass and doing tours and stuff, which is just insane. And it was a very interesting place, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, it's weird because you have rappers in there, but you also have a lot of like 1950s and 60s like blues
Oh
and
yeah.
jazz guys in there that like you never would have heard of. They have like a whole they have like whole sections of basically like the African American influence
There's
into
so
music,
much.
and
It's
that
almost everything.
right, and it kind of leads up into like a room of Elvis and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. I had never been there, and shit, half to three quarters of the people that are actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I probably never heard of,
Oh yeah.
because again, it's from the 50s and 60s, and people that you're like, I don't even know who the fuck that is, but they were instrumental in producing that music at that time.
Yeah, you could trace back like two kinds of music. There's the classical music, which was the orchestra and the Mozarts of the world, and then there was the music that came out of America, out of the post-slavery South, and it is why it's the Beatles, right? Like the Beatles are based off of that music. Creedence Clearwater is based off of that music. It's and then you get all the other stuff that follows that, like your punk rock in the late '70s, early '80s, um, and then
Yeah, they had a whole areas kind of devoted to that kind of thing, like the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, stuff like that. Um, I mean, it was actually just a very interesting experience, very cool. But they did have like floors that were ultimately devoted to almost nothing. But they had an area for live music. People were playing like live music, not like a big band or anything like that, but just people playing live music and a place to get drinks, and but you couldn't take them out into the museum. So you like had to drink them in a certain area, which was interesting. But um, I'd go back, like, if you're coming to visit, because I think you're actually coming on a holiday weekend. If you wanted to drive out to Cleveland and do something like that, that's doable. It's only about a 2-hour drive.
Even 2 hours seems like a lot, but I could probably survive.
If that's something that you were interested in,
I don't
dude,
know.
I can drive 2 hours and like to somewhere and back in one day, and it doesn't really bother me. But I've driven so much, being from Philly and living in Pittsburgh. Like, I've driven so much back and forth over the last 15 years that I've been with my wife, that and that's a 4-hour drive. Like, I've done that in the span of 24 hours. Like, I drove out to Philly when right after I moved here, actually, like a month after I moved here, my grandmother was put in hospice and was going to pass away. So I drove 4 hours to go say goodbye to my grandmother, and then I turned around and drove back, like, all in one day. I mean, it's a lot, but it's doable. I like to drive to go on vacation, so because I don't really care for flying. It's like when we drove to Florida, we'll do like 9 or 10 hours in the car, and I can do that like it's nothing. Anything after that, I'm like, I'm pissed off and I don't want to drive anymore. But 9, 10 hours in the car, I can do.
I didn't. I hate driving. I really do. I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Even when I'm driving like my new 718, I still can't imagine wanting to drive it more than like an hour and a half. And that's basically as far as Los Angeles is. So I'm willing to go to Los Angeles, but that's about all. Um, I was just thinking how strange it was that the Ohio has kind of like quite a few Hall of Fames because they have like the NFL Hall of Fame as well.
Do they? Interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it's just a weird thing. I was looking while you were talking about that. I was looking up other Hall of Fames that I thought were prominent, like the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's actually in New York, but um, Hall of Fames are kind of weird because I like the idea of a Hall of Fame for a sport. It makes a lot of sense to me. But when you have like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or like the Video Game Hall of Fame, you're like, what is the merit for that? I guess it's strange, but because you're saying like, oh, we're gonna introduce Sonic the Hedgehog into the Video Game Hall of Fame, and you're like, what does that mean?
Right. Like, I wouldn't say that rap music belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it's not rock and roll, just based off of like the title of the actual museum. But like, I don't know if there's a rap Hall of Fame. So I guess basically now the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is just a music Hall of Fame. Ultimately, it's what it seems like. Um, they had Taylor Swift stuff there, which that's not rock music, like that's country music, and um, you know, Michael Jackson was the king of pop. They have a whole section dedicated to Michael
You have
Jackson.
to.
That's not necessarily rock music, but he's, I mean, arguably the biggest star of all time when it comes to music. So I guess you have to have him in there. And I just thought it was interesting how eclectic it was. Like, you kind of don't expect that. You get to see a lot of different, really cool styles of guitars and stuff. And we spent 2 hours in there, maybe. Uh, but there's so many plaques. Like, you could read, maybe they had like a set list or something from a band that was like really big, but you can't really stop and watch or like read everything because there's always people behind you. So
Hmm.
you kind of always feel like you have to just keep it moving. And I thought that was a big problem, but I don't need to stop and read all of that shit, to be honest. It doesn't mean that much to me.
Well, my I make it down to the Peterson Automotive Museum in LA about once a year. I'm gonna go again because they just opened a huge 75th anniversary Porsche thing there. But that's the same thing there. You can't really sit there and read every single plaque about every single car. Nor do I frankly care about half of the cars in that building. Like, I mean, probably like 10 or 15% of the cars in that building are electric cars, and you cannot get me interested in an electric car. Like, I don't care. They've been around for 100 years, believe it or not, and like I could not give two shits about it. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting. All right. Well, I hope that my recording comes through pretty good. I'm actually downloading the patch for the day one patch for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is 90 fucking gigabits.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, God,
For a patch?
yeah, I like the day one patch. And
It's like a whole new game.
dude, it's a 105 gig install. I'm like, man, that's crazy. Also, there's a little scuttle on the internet. Apparently, it's unconfirmed reports. I have to actually go in there and play it myself, but apparently that game got glowing reviews everywhere, but it had tons of graphics and frame rate issues before it came out, and it kind of makes me wonder if like those reviews were being honest at all. But hopefully this day one patch fixes that, because this is like a top 5 game of the year for me. Like there was a set list of games that I was gonna play no matter what this year because I was really excited for them, and this is like on that list, much like your 100 garbage movies list. And
Oh, they're not all garbage.
I'm kidding. There's actually going to be a new Oppenheimer trailer in 2 weeks. Oh, gosh, I can't wait for that movie. I might go see that in the theater.
I'm not even sure if that's actually on my list of movies, just because it might not have been on the list that I was reading from all the movies that have come out. Like, I've actually had to add stuff to the list that I see pop up. But I'm obviously going to see Oppenheimer. But right now, I think my focus is on Evil Dead Rise. My brother came to town last night, and he said he went to see it and that he really liked it. And they have so many Easter eggs from previous Evil Dead movies and everything. He was like, I need to watch it again and be able to like pause it to read some of the things, because I'm sure there's more Easter eggs than what I saw. So, but he said it was very gory and very fun.
I've heard good things. Same thing with the Mario movie. There were just so many references that I could write them down, and oh my goodness. It's going to be an interesting few months because I don't know if there's anything major coming out at the end of the year. There's not like a Avatar 2 or anything like that, but
It's such a good year for movies. I mean, it's like insane, like an absolute insane year for movies.
these are post-COVID
what
movies.
like what do you think would be like the end of the year?
Well,
Like September to December?
um, for me, my movie going interest kind of starts now and ends. Well, it started with John Wick 4, which I haven't seen yet, but that's like what I consider to be like a tentpole release, all the way through Oppenheimer. So it's gonna be like Guardians of Volume 3. It's gonna be I guess Barbie. I'm curious about that movie because I think Greta Gerwig is a great filmmaker. But what do we have after that? What's going on?
Okay, so we'll say June. We'll start from June to the end of the year. We'll give you the last 6 months. Transformers is coming out, which is already being said it is a mess of a movie.
Oh, it looks
it
looks
yeah,
terrible.
it looks bad.
But they're all bad. That's the thing. Sorry to people who
Right.
actually like those movies. I know
Right.
there are people who do. I think they're fucking terrible.
Agreed. The Flash is coming out.
That
so
one
they're gonna
looks
try
bad.
It's like it's one of the last DCEU movies or
Good
whatever. Yeah, was that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you did
Holy
it.
shit! Look at me go.
Before James Gunn
did
took
the
over
thing.
the studio, so
Right, and so now they're going to basically end that world with the Flash and start new. From what I understand.
well, there's and also I'm sorry to do this to you. Hate to put my nerd hat on. There's also Blue Beetle, which is also a DCEU movie for a character that nobody ever fucking heard of in their entire life.
That's on my list for August.
Okay.
So I did put that on there because it's new, like it's a new character that not a lot of people are familiar with. Indiana Jones.
Oh my God, that movie looks so terrible. I hate the title, The Dial of Destiny. Look, the last one was bad. Everybody admits it. It couldn't look worse for that character. I am just so. Oh, it makes me. I'm angry.
It
about
can't be worse than the one with Shia LaBeouf in it.
Crystal Skull.
Yeah, that one was pretty bad from what I remember.
Oh, it's terrible.
But I must say, I don't think I've seen every Indiana Jones movie from start to
I
finish.
have seen them all. I love the Ark of the Covenant, or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sorry, and then God, I'm drawing a blank on the third one right now. Those are great movies, though. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the greatest action movies ever filmed. It basically just starts and then it just boom, it just goes through to the end. Temple of Doom I like a little because it's kind of it's a little weird. Actually, it's a lot weird, and that's got Short Round in it, Oscar winner, whatever that guy's name is. I forget his name. Okay, go on. Sorry.
In July, we have the new Insidious. I think it's chapter 5, technically, but it's ultimately the third movie. I think they ignore movies 3 and 4 in it, and it goes back to the original cast. But it's like 10 years after the second movie ended, I
That
think.
first movie, you could tell me your thoughts on it as well. It is 75% of that movie is fucking fantastic, and then the back end
Yeah.
of that movie just completely falls apart in a way that not many movies can do.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed the Insidious 1 and 2. I mean, 2 was obviously not as good as 1, but you're right. I think Insidious 1 it was pretty good for about 75% of the time, and then not so much after. But continuing on in July, we have Mission Impossible 9,
Uh,
9,
Dead
9,
Reckoning
8,
Part 1.
8. Yeah. So that's going to be
That's
awesome.
gonna be awesome.
That's just gonna, it's not even gonna be like good from a story standpoint or anything like that. It's just gonna be blowing shit
Well,
up.
they keep getting better. I mean, I even love the second one. I'm willing to admit its flaws, but man, those movies. I'm gonna go rewatch those movies after we're done. Like, I love that series.
So I don't know if you remember, I was pretty starkly like anti Mission Impossible after the first one, and having not even seen most of them, I was pretty starkly anti Mission Impossible. And then you guys were like really on me about it, like really, really up my ass about it. And you're like, you have to go back and watch them, and I did, and they're fantastic. As long as all you want is like crazy action, um, to me they're 007
But
movies.
better.
They're James Bond. Yeah, I like Daniel Craig as James Bond, but that's ultimately what these are. They're like hardcore, just action movies. And mad respect to Tom Cruise for doing his own stunts.
Mad respect to Tom Cruise for saving the film industry as well.
Oh God, yeah, and Scientology. Where would we be without Scientology? So continuing in July, I'm gonna watch this movie. Not really want to, but I'm going to. I'm gonna watch Barbie.
Um,
I'm gonna wait for it to come out.
I'm going to as
Fucking
well.
pay to go see it in
Okay,
theaters, but I'm gonna
Margot
watch it.
Robbie is one of my favorite actresses, and
So hot.
I mean, I
That's why you're watching it.
I
Come on.
unironically love I Tanya. Like, she's amazing in that movie, and that movie's fantastic. But Greta Gerwig, she makes interesting movies. I've only seen parts of Little Women, but that was the last production she made, and I liked that too. And I mean, let's be honest. Like, I'm not saying anything controversial, but when I say that there aren't a lot of female directors in Hollywood, and the ones that do get to make movies, they make pretty bad movies, like The Eternals with Zoe Zhang or whatever her name is. But there are a few exceptions to that rule, and that's Greta Gerwig and a couple others that I'm not gonna mention right now. But anyway, on the same day as Barbie,
Oppenheimer.
3 hours long. Matt Damon says.
Yes, and I might go see that in theaters as well. I think that'd be cool. Are they putting that in IMAX? Do you know?
Everything's in IMAX now, or every major release.
Then I probably will go see that in IMAX. That definitely seems like
There was a
one.
lot of buzz about them recreating the nuclear explosion in a realistic way, because if anybody was going to do a nuke, it would have been Nolan, but they couldn't do that, obviously. So
Or did they?
we'll have to wait and see.
We'll find out. August is a little light. I mean, Blue Beetle's there, and The Last Voyage of Demeter, I want to see for
What's
sure.
that?
Uh, that's Dracula on a ship in like the 15 or 1600s,
Oh
I think.
shit.
Maybe the 1700s. Seems like they're transporting his coffin. I think it's a book. But a lot of people have been talking about this movie coming out for a long time. It's kind of been in the works.
Well, the story of Nosferatu is that he Dracula's castle. Dracula leaves his castle on a boat and goes to wherever to infect it.
Yeah, I think that is the actual story
That's
behind it.
a great concept for a movie because that's the part of the
It hasn't been
right.
done yet.
That's the in the movies. The transport on the ship is the part that isn't done at all. It's always the story of the
Sure.
guy going there and then them leaving. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that's in August. I only had 4 movies for August, but again, this list I started making at the end of last year. So like, not everything had dates, like concrete dates that it was coming out in 2023. And so some of these months might be a little light versus what's actually coming out. Okay. I kind of adjust it as I go. So August is light. September, The Equalizer 3.
I didn't like the Equalizer one. Yeah,
Really?
I don't know why. It just didn't do it for me.
It's an interesting opinion.
Yeah, I know. People love that movie.
I enjoyed it. The Nun 2 is coming out. I don't really consider that like big time
No, not really.
because the first one kind of failed. And then Expendables 4.
What? There's an Expendables 4?
Yeah. Yes.
Good God. Okay,
Yeah.
well, those aren't great movies either, but
And then in October, we have Craven the Hunter, which is Marvel's first R-rated superhero movie. And they just had, what's his face, Aaron Taylor Johnson at Comic-Con, and he shared a clip. And they said it's pretty violent and bloody. So I'm looking forward to that because I want to see what Marvel actually does with an R rating.
so
That's not, you know,
yeah,
Deadpool.
I mean, and that's a Sony Pictures film. So when you talk about the Marvel as a universe, you have the Sony sub universe where all the Spider-Man stuff lives, and Kraven the Hunter falls into that. That's a Spider-Man villain. And they did it. They did Morpheus. They did Venom. Bad movies. It would be interesting to see if they could pull off a Kraven the Hunter after having 3 failures in that regard. But at the same time, Aaron Taylor Johnson is a fantastic actor. He's so underrated, and Russell Crowe's in it, so that kind of gets me a little more interested.
I think it'll be an interesting movie, interesting character for sure. I guess he's one of the more well-known
He's one
Spider-Man
of like
villains.
the top 6, yeah.
And but they said like in this video that he like is seen tearing the flesh out of somebody's neck and like spitting it out into like onto the ground and stuff because they're like hunting a lion or like trying to poach a lion or something like that. So it's going to be pretty violent. Aaron Taylor Johnson does physical acting pretty well,
He's been
actually.
in a couple of Marvel movies, which is what kind of breaks this timeline a little. He was what was the name of that character in
He's finally getting an actual character, like not a tertiary or whatever kind of character. He's getting a decent character, but the question is, Spider-Man is going to show up in this sometime.
I
They have to
guess so.
introduce Craven to the Spider-Man universe. Which Spider-Man are they going to give you?
Well, so there was a thing with Venom 2 where they kind of
I didn't see that.
I
yet,
don't know
but
that.
go ahead and spoil it. I
Okay,
don't
well,
give a
it's
shit.
terrible anyway. But
Which is a shame because Woody Harrelson's in it.
And Tom
Batman
Hardy.
is a GM.
Tom Hardy too. I guess that in those films, it's not explicit whether or not that Venom character exists in Tom Holland's Spider-Man universe. So when you're saying which version is going to show up, it may not even be Spider-Man, or it might not be Peter Parker. It might be Miles Morales. So they could do some stuff. Yeah.
Right. That's what I said is like they can kind of introduce any version of Spider-Man that they want at this point because Tom Holland like that's kind of reached its Apex, right?
I
So this
guess
could be a way that they like announce a new Spider-Man for whatever the next iteration of Spider-Man is. Because let's face it, they have to redo Spider-Man every fucking 10
it's the
years.
only character that they do well though. And Batman.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. And don't get me wrong, Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire weren't great.
Actually, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite from that era.
Who was in Spider-Man 2? 3 was
3 was
bad.
the bad
That
one.
was like Sandman, right?
Yeah, which Sandman was actually the only character in that movie that was actually done well. 2
Sure.
was with Doc Ock, Alfred
Okay.
Molina, who reprised his role in that last Spider-Man movie.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I
But it's all
remember.
bullshit, right?
Um,
You
yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen those movies. I thought the Spider-Man movies, as much shit as you guys give me for just being a Marvel hater, I don't think that's actually true. I thought Spider-Man was actually done fairly well for the most part.
In my
Um,
opinion, Sam Raimi laid out the template for the modern superhero movie with Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Sure. But I think that they made some really bad casting mistakes. I thought for Venom, picking Topher Grace is that was just not
Well,
good.
yeah, it wasn't good, but the character wasn't. There's a number of that movie's got a lot of problems. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's unwatchable. Oh, okay, so this movie isn't going to be on your list. I don't think. I'm going to assume. I just want to mention it. There's a movie called Killers of the Flower Moon, which isn't
Yes. No, that's
okay. So
that's on
that
the
one I'm
list.
excited for.
But
too.
I wasn't sure when it came out
I
because
think
it wasn't
same day.
on that list. But that's something that I definitely want to see. That's Leonardo DiCaprio serial killer
And
movie. I'm
Scorsese
all in.
also. Scorsese's last
Yep.
movie was a huge disappointment to me, but
So that's October.
the 6th. And then the 13th, there's a
Adding it to the list
Yeah.
now.
on the 13th there's a huge I didn't even know that they did this. This seems like a horrible idea. But it's probably on your list. So, you want to keep going?
Yeah, so I have also in October, I actually only had 3 on here. It was Craven the Hunter, The
That's the one,
Exorcist reboot.
What a horrible
I'm
idea.
I'm really excited for it,
Good for you,
actually.
man.
I am. You know how horror is now. Like The Exorcist when it came out in the 70s was phenomenal.
It's
I
still
mean,
phenomenal.
It holds
so
up.
good.
Like it holds up, especially if you're a horror fan. I'm interested to see what they do now that they have good technology behind horror movies. Because even if you watch some of the lower budget horror films, the gore and everything else is still up there. It's on point. Sometimes it looks cheesy, but I don't think that that's like a detractor because in the lower budget, you want it to look cheesy.
It works really well for
But
Terrifier.
this isn't going to be that. Right. Like Terrifier, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, which was phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that because it's Winnie the Pooh, like, and that it's unique. It was a quintessential slasher film. Like, just take the standard like equation for a slasher film, and that's what Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was. And they just threw this theme in there, and it just
Well,
works. It
I want
works.
to say I don't know that this is a direct remake of that original Exorcist movie. It could just be another exorcism movie. There's just so many of them.
Well, it's kind of what I think it's going to end up kind of almost being, unless it's almost marketed like The Thing was in 2011, where you're like, oh, this is a remake. It's just The Thing, but it's not. It was a prequel to The Thing from 1979 or whatever, which still holds up. One of the greatest horror movies of all time. And I actually didn't mind the 2011 remake. Same thing with Evil Dead. People kind of hated the 2013 remake. I liked it, but it was just gore. It was a gore fest, don't get me wrong, compared to the actual original movies. Like, in my opinion, nothing will ever beat those. Evil Dead 1, 2, and then Army of Darkness is 3 of my favorite movies of all time. So it's not going to equate to that. But The Exorcist was one of those movies. I mean, they handed out barf bags to go see that when it came out. And it's a far cry from what's been done in horror movies today. But it does hold up, like I said. But
I want to point out
what they do with horror now is way
I
different.
do want to mention. I was just looking this up because I didn't know this was actually coming. Ellen Burstyn, who was in the original Exorcist, is in the new one. Which, yeah, but also, and that's good, right? What bodes bad for it, though, is it's directed by David Gordon Green, who did Halloween Ends and Halloween Kills. Yeah, so that doesn't bode well for it. But I also want to mention one more thing. The original Exorcist was nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if you knew that.
That's an
It's like one of the only horror movies to ever be nominated for an Academy Award.
I can promise this one won't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I know that. I know that. Okay, I know what I'm getting myself into with this movie. I know what I'm expecting. I'm expecting a fresh, modern look at the same thing, ultimately. And they're going to use the jump scares. Like, jump scares are now the way horror movies are.
Well, it's a Blumhouse movie too,
which is a shame.
That's all that is.
Right. So that's what it's going to be. But Blumhouse does some good stuff. They do. I'm not going to say they don't. They do. So I'm excited for that in October. I might not see it in theaters. Although, I don't know. I might owe it to my dad to go see that one in theaters because he turned me on to The Exorcist at like a very young age. Like, I got to see all that stuff, and he's like, "Man, they used to hand out barf bags to this movie." Like when I was growing up and shit.
Yeah, that movie. The first time I watched it, I was an asshole in high school, and I didn't appreciate film, so I watched it laughing my ass off. I was such a stupid kid. Like, that movie is so cool. Okay, what's next?
Saw 10 in October.
What? Oh no.
Yeah, but it sounds like they're actually bringing back the guy who played Jigsaw in it. So it sounds like they're gonna maybe ignore some of the shittier, like, end of the line movies and maybe do something new here. But that's just what I've been reading. In November, we get Dune Part 2.
Super excited. Yeah,
excited
Dune
for.
1, fantastic. They say the second one's just going to be a war movie. And the first one was incredible. The music, the sound, everything about that movie was so good.
The first one didn't have a ton of action.
It really
in
didn't,
it.
no.
It had enough, but it set up the war that Dune 2 is going to be.
That's what made Dune such an impossible adaptation, because it's so much front loaded about who's who, what spice is, what all these different factions are, and the fact that, okay, so Dune wasn't like, it didn't set the world on fire, but it did well enough for them to actually do the sequel, and it wasn't a given when the first one came out. So,
oh my god, dude, if they didn't do the sequel, I would have been so fucking upset.
Well, it's a lot of money. It's a huge production. That's the problem.
But you just can't call something Part 1 and then never fucking release Part 2. Unless you're History of the World Part 1 from Mel Brooks, and then you go to that piece of shit, History of the World Part 2, that, like, I won't even watch because it just looks so dog shit bad.
Okay, I'm very excited for Dune Part 2. The cast looks amazing. They added Leah Seydoux to the cast. Like, I'm gonna always have a crush on her.
Oh, she was so good in Crimes of the Future.
She's so good.
So good. Hunger Games is also, the new Hunger Games is coming out in November. I'm just interested to see, because I've seen all of the Hunger Games movies. I'm interested to see what they're doing with this one.
That's one I couldn't care less about. I watched the first one.
That's all. I won't go see it in theaters.
Yeah,
that's for sure. I might rent it for $5, but that's about it.
Can we talk about one you skipped over? Because this movie looks absolutely terrible, but I do want to talk about it.
Again, this is not an exhaustive
I'm mentioning
list.
Something that I'm probably never going to watch because I didn't watch even the first one. But there is that movie, The Marvels, which is the, God, I forget the name of those fucking characters. Captain Marvel, and
Captain
then
Marvel,
the other character. It's the lady superheroes, right? I don't have a problem with lady superheroes. What I have a problem with is that it looks fucking
Sure.
terrible. It looks so bad. It'll be interesting to see if that one actually bombs, and it'll be interesting to see if Guardians 3 also doesn't do very well this weekend. But okay, go on.
And then for this, I don't have anything else for November. I haven't looked as far into the year because as the year goes on, I'm just kind of picking them up as
Well,
I
there's
see
a
them.
Napoleon movie coming out on Apple or produced by Apple with Joaquin Phoenix coming out in November or October.
Ooh, is he playing Napoleon?
Yeah, and it's got
Oh, that
Vanessa
could be
Kirby
interesting.
too, of Mission Impossible fame.
Um, yeah, so I'm gonna go back and I have to revise this list, obviously. But in December, Wonka is coming out. They're doing like a prequel, and Timothy Chalamet is playing.
He
Willy
looks the part. Like he absolutely. I mean,
Wonka. For sure. He's a good
I
actor,
know,
dude.
and I don't hate him or anything. I got nothing against the guy. I haven't seen a lot of his movies, so I can't really give a fair assessment of him.
He's in that movie that came out last year, the cannibal one, Bones
Yeah,
and
and
All or whatever,
that's on my
and it didn't
yeah,
get
it's on
great
my
reviews.
list. Also, he was in Dune, right? So he's
Oh,
got
yeah.
bona fides.
I, he's a really good actor. I mean, he did that movie. I can't remember what it was on Netflix, where him and Robert Pattinson were in it. It was like a medieval movie. I can't remember the name of it. It might have just been called The King or something like that.
If you want to
And he
keep
played
vamping, I can look it up.
like a young king, I think of Britain, and he like didn't want the crown and anything. He's kind of like running around with prostitutes and like all this other shit.
It was called The
And
King. It was about
then
King Henry V.
yeah, yeah, and then his father dies, and I believe he takes over, and he goes to war, and he goes to fight Robert Pattinson, who's like the king of France, and he beats the shit out of him. Like it's pretty funny, and Robert Pattinson was actually really good in that movie as well. But it was a Netflix movie, I think, and it was very, very good.
Yeah, he
I
was
enjoyed
also
it.
in Interstellar, which I didn't know, but he was
Timothy
yeah, he
Chalamet.
played young Tom Cooper. But he was in French Dispatch, which I liked, and Lady Bird, which is a movie that really, really, really depressed me, but was good. But I will never watch it again. It reminded me of my childhood in the '90s in a way that I didn't really feel comfortable with.
Sure. The end of the year seems pretty light for movies, but that's not unexpected given you have like Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Well,
so.
there's you could keep going, I guess. I'm only looking at this. I didn't know these movies were coming out.
Oh no, I'm actually out of movies on the list. But there's more I'm sure that are coming
They're
out that I
fucking
wasn't aware
notable
of.
movies, but I don't know if they're gonna be worth a goddamn. Ghostbusters Afterlife 2. Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Not notable.
Okay, so that movie is kind of okay. It's the best sequel to the original Ghostbusters in my opinion, but that's not really saying much. And then they kind of go like full nostalgia at the end, and it's real yucky because they put one of the actors who died. They put him in the movie as like a CG, you know, and then
Oh,
he's dead, man.
I don't like it when
Yeah,
they do
it's
that.
so weird. They did it with that Star Wars movie too, where they brought back one of the characters who died in like the '70s. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you don't. And you know what? It's gonna get worse because of AI. Like,
What was like in Terminator Salvation, them like superimposing Arnold onto a fucking
yeah, he wasn't even
Terminator.
like involved
Come
in
on.
that movie.
Stop doing
Um,
that. No. And he he looked like he was fucking 50 years
Yeah,
younger.
and it doesn't work. And I'm
Stop
sorry,
doing
Brad, but it's
that.
also not going to work in the new Indiana Jones movie because they're going to de-age Harrison Ford. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's an uncanny valley that they cannot get right. They tried it in X-Men 3. They tried to make those guys look young. It just what was that the Scorsese movie, the last one that came out, the 3-hour Netflix thing or whatever about the Jimmy Hoffa. I mean, that was like they de-aged those guys, and Joe Pesci looked terrible. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean I was gonna say you had Pesci and all these guys who are now like super old. I didn't even see
I
that.
didn't.
The
I
Irishman. Yeah,
didn't
I know
like
what you're
it.
talking about. Kill the Irishman, I think it was called.
Whatever it was, it doesn't. It's so forgettable. Scorsese's better than that, man, and Netflix gave him so much money for it. So Ghostbusters Afterlife 2, I guess is, I don't know. I like the original Ghostbusters, and then the next three movies are not good. And then there's an Aquaman movie, which
I wouldn't. I never
Brad,
would have mentioned that
we
because it's like
we
it's
just
not
said
worth watching
we were just talking
for
about
sure. I don't even know if it's notable.
we were just saying like the end of the DCEU, and apparently not. They've got because they had Batgirl and they shelved that piece of shit. I guarantee you it was, by the way. And
Hopefully they just shelve.
no,
Aquaman.
it's coming out.
Call it a day.
But good God, man! Like after this one, they've got to like they kind of got it right with Suicide Squad. Kind of wonder if they're gonna like maybe pull it off. And then also there's they are adapting The Color Purple again. I don't understand why we need that when the original with Whoopi Goldberg is like a perfect movie. Anyway,
I don't know. I really do think it's a great year for
surprisingly,
movies.
yeah.
I've thought that about the first few months of the year, and especially if you're willing to go to the movies or like if you can rent it or things like that. I mean, there's a few movies still that I want to watch. I want to watch 65 with Adam Driver.
Adam Driver has like a dinosaur.
I want to watch
coming
it.
out. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's 65. Yeah, it's on Amazon for the home premiere, but I don't know if I'm willing to spend $20 to rent.
It's out now.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Do I want to watch it?
There's also Inside. It's a movie called Inside.
Willem
with,
Dafoe. Okay, so I saw that
yes.
one. The trailer hooked me. I was like, "Fucking, I gotta watch this." And then I saw it had 2.5 or 3 stars on Amazon, and I was like, "Oh no, is it not good?" It looked good.
And did you watch it?
Yeah, because of 3 stars. I was like,
Oh, yeah. Trailer got me too. I'm like, oh, this could be kind of cool.
I love Willem Dafoe, man.
Almost
He's so goddamn good.
And I want to watch The Pope's Exorcist.
Yeah,
when that
and
comes out.
again, like
Russell Crowe got me, man. That Russell Crowe in a horror movie
dude,
like that.
Did you see that?
That looks pretty good. And the last few exorcism movies I've seen, like The Offering this year, I watched, and then what was it? I told you to watch it. It's about like a girl who's a nun who actually joins like a squad. I can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head. But it was very good. I rather enjoyed it. Prey of the Devil or Prey on the Devil.
I think what turned me off of that one, maybe you recommended it to me, but I was watching the trailer and it's like she works in a man's world, and I was like, oh, it's one of those. Like,
yeah,
they get so preachy with the trailers that it makes me want to not.
But that's right. Sure. I mean, that's what it was, though. It was a girl joining a group of priests who are learning to be exorcists. And she had, like, a demon that, like, haunted her basically her whole life. And it, like, inhabited her mother and everything because it was always after her. And that movie was pretty good, dude. I can't say shit. I told our buddy Ray, shout out to Pito, to watch it, and he was also pleasantly surprised with it. Obviously, all of you have, if you're an avid listener, have seen Ray. He was on here for some of our just real reviews discussions, which we got to do one of those soon. But I told him to watch it. He also thoroughly enjoyed it. It was pretty good for a possession type, exorcist type movie.
Since we're obviously on Russell Crowe, one of the great actors of his generation. I mean, he's been in so many good things. Have you seen Unhinged, where it's like the road rage movie? Fuck, that movie was really good. Yeah, it was weird.
Interesting. It was really weird,
also,
man.
I want to recommend one other thing,
movie.
because I know you haven't seen this because it's an old movie and you don't watch old movies typically. The Exorcist 3 with George C. Scott. That is a pretty interesting movie, a horror movie I think you might enjoy.
I probably have seen it.
I hope so.
Growing up, but it's like, I can't remember
it
everything.
Came out like, I don't know, 90. Okay. Well, that's exciting. We didn't really plan on talking about movies, but glad we did.
Well, I mean, you see the list, And I keep telling you, like, oh, I knocked another one off the list, knocked another one off the list, but it never gets smaller. Like, I just keep adding shit to it.
Well,
So,
there's just a lot coming out, and every once in a while I'll go on like Apple because they've got some good movies on there, and I'll go on HBO and look for movies. And actually, I've been on a real downslide on watching movies lately. Nothing's really catching my eye, but
I, even though I have this list, I've kind of been running out of some shit to watch. Like, at the beginning of the week, I can watch, like, Succession and, a couple other shows. I just finished that show From. Uh, its first season, its second season just came out today, actually, but I think you have to have like MGM
what the
Plus, which
fuck?
I don't even know what the fuck that is. Yeah, or like who the fuck has it, but I don't know if they're releasing those episodes on Amazon Prime. But the first season of that was pretty
You
good,
know what?
actually. I was
It just occurred to
pleasantly
me, Real
surprised.
Reviews, Succession. Probably should just do that show because I love that show.
Yeah, that's a good one. We got to talk to Ray and see if he wants to do an episode
Well, he could do it
of
for any
Real
movie,
Reviews.
but
We haven't done
yeah,
one in a
and
while.
well, Better Call Saul. I mean, that was the last time. Anyway,
That was a
uh,
while ago.
I would hate to do a podcast just full of like fun, interesting topics, and not get into some news. Do you want to do a little news?
Oh, we could do a
Um,
little news.
I'll give you. Well, I'll ask you. I guess Sudan is having a civil war, and we've once again abandoned our American citizens in a foreign country. This is, I think, the fourth embassy that's been evacuated by the U.S. under Biden, which is under discussed.
So this is definitely evidence that you did not listen to
Did
the
you go
solo
into it?
broadcast.
Okay.
I covered
Well,
Sudan
then
a
we
little
don't have to
bit,
talk about it.
and that it's very much akin to Afghanistan. After
Great
Biden
minds
took
think
over
alike.
and exited Afghanistan, um, and it's a fucking travesty. There's 16,000 people still caught in Sudan. And I went into the whole like Brittany Griner thing. Like we
Ooh,
traded an
okay.
actual like war criminal for Brittany Griner, but we can't actually get 16,000 fucking people out of Sudan who are trying
Oh,
to
and then there's that
evacuate.
journalist that got arrested in Russia as well. And I guess I shouldn't joke like this, but I hope he can play basketball because that's the only way he's getting out of Russia.
Nope. Nope. And Brittany Griner even said she's like, I'm done playing international basketball except to play for Team USA.
Yeah,
Okay. Which means nobody gave a fuck
I
about
don't
you to
want to. I
begin
never
with.
want to. There's only we know why that happened, and it's a real shame.
Of course we do. We're
It's really
adults.
pathetic. Ron DeSantis has been terrible the past couple of weeks. He's not. I don't.
Yeah.
Man, I hate saying this. I really do because it changes from week to week. But he looks as weak as he's ever looked, and I don't know, man. I don't know if he's got it in him.
You and I were pretty staunchly on the Ron DeSantis train, but now he's not looking so hot. I mean, Disney's kind of running
Because
roughshod
he
over
tried to
him a
run
little
roughshod
bit
over
right now
them,
with
and
a
he
lot of
shouldn't
this
have.
shit. Right, and now he's getting it back tenfold, and it's not looking good for him. Trump obviously shitting on him every chance he gets. He had a moment where he probably could have stolen a lot of the Republican base, but he's let that moment go, and I think he might be
Remember
done.
when he did the Disney thing? And I told you on this podcast that I understand the people enjoying him attacking a corporation, but that he was over leveraging his own power, and it wasn't a good idea. This is why, and this is why I try to be consistent in my ideology about using power against your enemies because your enemies will get to do it to you too. And this is why I don't think it's a good idea to stack the Supreme Court because look what happened. I mean, you shouldn't do that just to get a near term win, or you're going to ban this kind of speech, or you're going to fund this thing but not that thing. I mean, it goes on and on, but you got to really think about the consequences of your actions, and he's going to pay the price for that. I think with this lawsuit because Disney has him in a corner basically because he said everything out loud. Like he would never shut up about it, and they're like, well, we have all this evidence now that you hung yourself. Congratulations.
Right. But I mean, to counter that though, it's really funny because the left has gotten behind Disney.
I love it.
Like
Oh,
crazy,
it's so ironic.
but they're the first ones to attack any corporation, but they're forced to defend Disney as a corporation just because Ron DeSantis.
Yeah,
is the one
Disney
going
ate, by the
after
way,
them.
one of the largest corpo pieces of shit in the world who has vacuumed up every major IP in like American history, like Marvel, like Star Wars, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, we're going to go and defend them and be on Disney's side. Like, the fuck is wrong with you?
They couldn't hold on to all that Winnie the Pooh though.
Also, Disney of Beijing fame. Let's not even get into that. I mean, you film Mulan down the street from a fucking concentration camp, and the left is like praising them. What else do we got here? Kamala sucks. Randy Weingarten finally got her just desserts, I guess, because she's the head of the teachers union, the National Teachers Union, FTA, Federal Teachers Association. She's the one who like advocated for school closures, and now she's out there saying like, "Boy, we really got to focus on our kids, and we got to invest in them." You know, she wants us more money, obviously. And then she was on CNN like last night, and some guy was like, told her right to her face, and it's the first time it's happened. She basically said like, "You fucked up. You advocated for this. You masked children, and you made my own kids suffer." To which she's kind of speechless because when she posts on Twitter, and I'm kind of passionate about this issue, like the masking of kids in schools and school closures. She posts on Twitter, she shuts down the comments unless she follows you, so you can't ever respond directly to her. And then she goes, she's never been confronted in this way, and it's about time she does, because I mean the teachers. I don't know if you remember this, but the Chicago Teachers Union said that it was racist to reopen schools, and there were teachers who wanted their student loans forgiven before they would go back to teach classes again. And there was the masking of toddlers, and they made toddlers wear masks outside in the fucking winter in New York. Like, there are endless stories of teachers, and not all of them are bad, but there are the unions definitely are. They are bad actors in this. I mean, ugh. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. It just disgusts me.
No, I agree with you. It was a very sensitive subject.
But we knew.
And,
I knew from day one, and a lot of people did, and they got completely shut down. They were like, "You can't do this." You know how many kids died during the first year of COVID? They brought this up in the congressional hearing. They asked her how many. She said, "I don't know. I bad memory. I'm old." Or she said, "I don't follow statistics." It was like 0. You dumb bitch.
I think everyone's trying to get like forgiven for how they treated COVID and everything. And, we've actually discussed on this podcast articles that have come out. It was like, we need to give leniency to like how people reacted at the beginning of the pandemic. And I've told you, hold no quarter to these motherfuckers. I don't believe in it. You shut down schools with bad data.
They didn't consider the data at all.
Like, you didn't want it. You didn't care. You wanted to push a fucking narrative. Now you have to fucking live with it. The fact of the matter is, schools are like 2 years behind on education, sometimes even further. I know multiple teachers. My wife works for a school district, and that shit is all very real.
It is.
Okay? Like, you can't hide it. It's all very real. The lack of education is there. A friend of mine who is a teacher has said, the kids that you would think would catch up have, and the ones that you don't think would catch up.
And you know what those kids are?
And
those
there's
are
no
the
fixing
kids that won't catch up, are the kids that are the most susceptible to the social issues that we're always talking about in this country. And it's plainly obvious. You're like, who did you hurt the most disadvantaged? Because there were parents who could do the bubble learning or whatever they fucking call it. There were teachers who had private school. Gavin Newsom, very famously, his kids never got taken out of school, even though he shut the schools down because his kids went to a private school. on and on. And to say like, oh, we shut the schools down because we had no choice, and then fucking 3 months later, you were like, protesting is a human right. We have to do the protesting because it's a health issue, and it's like, oh, you fucking scumbags. That was where they fucked up, and that's why it was so hard. That's why people it snowballed into January 6th, where people were like, if you could protest during the summer of COVID, then why can't you go protest January 6th? I mean, they're very different things, but that was people's logic.
I mean, Fauci's still out
said
here
he didn't
saying
say anything.
crazy shit that he knows isn't fucking true. Like, he's lying constantly. And now that he's not in the public eye because he stepped down, like, he thinks he's got a pass. And it's one of the things that I hope Republicans actually stand for and go after Fauci. Like, put him in prison. Like, teach everybody a fucking lesson. I don't care. Like, set a new precedent for us, please, God. Because
I mean,
like,
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what happened. I mean, he's obviously like the main villain of the whole thing because he was the one who said, "I am the science," and he now says people shouldn't have listened, who shouldn't have treated what I said as me being the science. He said I was only following CDC guidance. Where did they get the CDC? Where did that come from? Right? It came from him. The lab leak thing. He's always saying like it's impossible. They were saying like recently it was a raccoon dog and that did it, and then a study came out and said no, that's wrong. And the Atlantic, a publication that doesn't know better now, ran that story saying it was probably from a raccoon dog. Not true. So, oh man, and I from day one I was always I knew it was going to happen with COVID. I absolutely knew it because the country was so polarized. It was going to divide everybody into two separate camps, and that's exactly what happened. And yeah, don't go show up at the fucking Capitol building with guns, Adam. Don't talk to me. I'm being serious here. Like that happened in wherever, Michigan or wherever it was, and that that didn't really help their cause because they were like, we're gonna fight mandates, and he was like, you look fucking crazy actually. But the other side of it is just as bad. And you're in Florida wearing a Grim Reaper costume on the beach, saying that Ron DeSantis has blood on his hands, and Georgia's experiment in human sacrifice. That was a fucking headline. It was crazy, man. Yeah, we should never let them forget, and we should remind them constantly of what they did.
Sure, but they also have headlines about Ron DeSantis eating pudding with his fingers. So, I mean, that's how much you can trust
those
those
idiots. It was 3 fingers,
idiots.
Brad. That's how detailed it was. It was 3 fingers. It's what?
If you aren't 3-fingering your pudding, I don't know how the fuck you're eating pudding. That's all I gotta say.
It's funny. We laugh because, there's actually really important, hard news going right now. And you really only get solid reporting from, like, the Free Beacon because they are the only outlet that's... I'm not even going to count Fox News in this because Fox News isn't interested in, like, that kind of stuff. But they'll do boots-on-the-ground reporting about stuff like, oh, this congressperson hasn't been in their office for 3 years. And they'll have records to show it. And you're like, that's really interesting. I'm glad somebody's out there doing it.
Boots on the ground, like U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, we just got evidence that maybe the Nord Stream 2 was blown up by the Russians. Yeah, today actually at 4:24, this article says that there was a Russian vessel called the SS-750, and it is equipped with a submarine and is used for underwater missions. And they photographed it near the pipeline like 3 days or a few days before.
Oh, sure.
Well,
sure.
It's not evidence, so I'm not convinced one way or the other, but it's...
Because all the other articles that we've seen are like,
okay, there is that I don't like either, by the way. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I want to know. I definitely do. Do you want to talk about Tucker Carlson? Like, Fox News letting go their... basically the biggest ratings star on television, cable TV.
You should really go back.
Oh,
and
okay.
To
Well,
podcast.
okay. So I didn't get the chance to talk about it, but I want to talk about him a little. Like, first of all, there was an unhinged MSNBC who was basically applauding this, saying like, "This is the greatest day ever," calling him a racist, all this stuff. He's not. I really don't think he is. He's a really brilliant writer, actually, which I was telling y'all in this here group chat that it'd be a shame for him to just give up on writing because he was so good at it. But
he was supposedly being fired over some discrimination lawsuit, like to the
by
point
a woman
of,
who never met him.
People saying he's a racist. Um, there are some articles now coming out, which actually I didn't talk about on the solo broadcast, of like him creating a hostile workplace and like all this other shit. But like Ellen DeGeneres was known for creating a
Mhm.
fucking hostile workplace, and people weren't fucking calling for her to be fired.
Well, these people
so
were
you can
upset
fuck
because
off.
he had, or not him. I doubt he even did this. I mean, he fucking worked from home basically. That's where his studio was. So was Hannity's. But don't ask me why I know that. They were posting. They had pictures of Nancy Pelosi in that bikini with her, you know, and
Oh God,
well,
help
they were
anybody
they
who looks
posted
at
those
that.
pictures around the office at the Fox News building, and when I saw that, I thought that's fucking hilarious because for like you and I, we'd be like, as a couple of guys, we'd find that pretty fucking hilarious, right? But it was treated as like this fucking war crime. Like, how could you, Nancy Pelosi of all people? Why would you make fun of that angel? And I was like, it's kind of a weird response. Yeah, it was
I mean,
kind of a
she's a
weird.
piece
I'm
of
like,
shit.
they're probably just
Oh,
having a fun time or whatever. But it. Um,
you can't do that
what
anymore
does
in
he
the
do
office.
next? Yeah. Well, I
Not
would do it in my
allowed.
office. That's but it is funny.
I mean, rumors have it that OAN offered him 25 million to come to
That's such a
OAN.
downgrade for him. He's so much better than that.
It, but it doesn't matter. I guess I will find out, right? Like, does he go on to do his own thing that becomes something big? Like, if he started a podcast, it would probably
Yep.
be huge, right? And he can say
Well,
whatever he
I mean,
wants
he
on
could
that.
be like a
So
Joe Rogan. Spotify would never take him, obviously, because they are a company that doesn't share his values. But that's the bet Fox News is making. Can Fox News put on a show at 8 o'clock, fake time, real time, whatever, that the country and people will watch, or were they only tune in during that hour because of Tucker Carlson? That's the bet they're making.
I think they're gonna find out real fucking fast that people only tuned in for
I do
Tucker
too.
Carlson. I mean, they don't even have a replacement for him, right?
Brian
And he's already
Kilmeade.
done.
Again,
So
I don't watch Fox. I don't even have Fox News. I just know this because I'm on Twitter. But it was Brian Kilmeade who took over. Who, um, again, like as far as like people shitheads on TV go, you probably could do worse than Brian Kilmeade, who seems like a pretty smart guy who writes interesting books and, he does the Fox and Friends in the morning. I don't know who fucking watches that shit, but yeah. But they
no
couldn't do
one.
like Gutfeld because he's got like the number one late show, which nobody probably knows. But he's got the number one late. Yeah.
Oh, Greg Gutfeld, yeah. I've actually been liking to watch some of his stuff lately. I've been really into watching people get red pilled and
Yeah, you're fucking up
shit
my
online,
Instagram
like,
algorithm, you too.
I know, dude. My whole Instagram algorithm is now people getting red pilled and jujitsu videos.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm all.
that's
It's
the
all like
only
red,
thing I'll
like
fucking see.
golf and that. But what was I gonna say about Gutfeld? Do you know who Kat Timpf is? She just came out with a book.
Mm-mm.
She's a libertarian who worked at National Review, and then they started putting her on. I don't know. She was on a number of shows on you know how Fox News is, right? Like they have these people that they have on contract, and then they like plug and play them into different TV shows. And she's really funny and interesting, and she's on a book tour right now. Actually, I think she's going to be on Bill Maher's podcast pretty soon. I saw a picture of that. She could, I mean, maybe someone like that, like, could be in that 8 p.m. slot, or maybe a number of people. Or there's a woman named Katie Pavlich. Do you know who that is? She's like a very. She's usually on a lot of those shows too. She's like a big 2A person, and I don't know. I guess they've got some talent there, maybe, but no Tucker Carlson. So.
Yeah, he'll do something, and I'm sure he'll land on his feet. I don't think it's gonna be a problem.
He would
for
probably
sure.
be as big as Joe Rogan if he wanted to be an independent voice in the podcast. I would
hope he
be
does.
interested in that. I mean, it'd be nice for us to have some competition, some real competition, because the podcast world right now doesn't have a lot of it. And we would welcome Tucker into our sort of milieu. Yeah, we
We
should
should
have
have
him
him
on.
on.
Okay, so we got that out of the way. Is there anything on your mind other than that, news-wise?
No, I mean, I'm going to do an episode. I don't know if you want to be in on that for the IHR
Hmm.
amendments, which was actually just done by Majid
Are
Nawaz,
we?
who does the
He's
used to do the
yeah.
Radical
He's
podcast, I believe.
let's say he's interesting. Um.
Well, for those of you who don't know who he was, is he, I believe, was a former
Yes.
terrorist who was actually reformed and taken out of Islam and now doesn't really believe in the actual, like, the terroristic form of Islam. And he does a lot of media in the UK and stuff. He just lost his show, or a show that he was on, and he has his own podcast and stuff, but he was on a show that now he's not on because they took him off. He's, I guess, a little too nutty for some people, but he's been on a lot of podcasts and things, and uh, very insightful. He actually just recently talked about the IHR amendments, so I might have to go back and listen to his podcast about it and read. There's like 45 pages
Wow.
of these amendments to read. So it's going to be like a lengthy subject. It might be the only subject for that podcast. So I can either do it solo, or if
Well,
you want to be a part
you
of that,
you can let me know.
we can make that
I
happen.
wouldn't mind doing my own solo stuff too. I just don't know what. I don't know. This is gonna sound kind of silly. I don't know if anybody actually listens to the solo episodes I do because I see the numbers, so I know that there's like it's not like a regular one, but I like talking about history and things in the past. I just like to tell those stories. Anyway, I'm admitting that nobody cares what I have to say on the air.
Well, there's a buddy of mine that I would like to have on to discuss like history and stuff like
Always.
that. If you're interested, he has a degree in history. He's a World War II and Revolutionary War or Civil War reenactor, and he knows an awful lot about history and the different wars and stuff like that. So I'd like to have him on. I think you would find
It's
him
I
very
would.
interesting.
It's hard with history because I have a problem where I can retain only so much and then I forget a lot. And so I got to go back. I mean, I just got this new book, Uproar, which is about satire in like old England and stuff like that. So I'm always looking for something interesting and new. Um, what are your plans for this weekend?
I have a good weekend coming up. Uh, Obviously, I love doing the podcast. Tomorrow, my wife is going out to the Luke Combs concert. It's a country jammer guy. Uh, so I have the whole night to myself. And then on Sunday evening, her friends are coming over for dinner. So I'm going to help cook, but I will actually be free for the evening.
Hmm.
So I'm also pretty pumped about that.
I have a lot of yard work to do, and I'm going to see some old coworkers from 2 jobs ago, which is kind of crazy, but they're good people.
We lead
Yeah,
interesting
really
lives,
interesting.
people.
I'll probably
Not
play Star
really,
Wars,
though.
but also hockey. You guys have kind of gotten me into the hockey, and I'm not like I'm still like learning.
Playoff hockey's the best, and if you wanted a series to be interested in, LA, Edmonton.
Yeah, that's
has
the one I've been
where it's
watching.
at.
Kind of because it's like my, I don't want to call it my hometown team or anything, but it's about as close as you're gonna get. And yeah, that's been really fun to watch. Hockey's the playoffs in hockey. It's interesting because I'm obviously a big fan of the NFL, and their playoffs are really way different because they play one game and then you're like one and done. And hockey, it's like, man, there's like 4 games a night, and it's pretty crazy.
For the
I mean,
first
obviously,
round,
there's
yeah.
fewer.
But then you play a best of seven, so you get to constantly see the same team like maybe 7 times. So you build a rivalry within yourself. So in the past when you've seen like the Flyers, which I'm a diehard Flyers fan, versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, it was always something to see because they were interstate rivalries already like established, and then you go into a 7-game series to try and win a Stanley Cup, and like it's just escalated.
That's
that much
how
more.
I the Angels and the Dodgers, like they drive down the freeway to play each other, and it's like really exciting because of that. Also, this is the first season,
Right.
the first time that all the NBA teams in California made the playoffs. Yeah, which is kind of I don't know if
Interesting.
people I don't know if people think about it because I do all the time because I live here. There are a lot of professional sports teams in California, like a lot. Um, so it's kind of
Yep. I mean, you have the Kings, the Ducks, and the
yep.
Sharks
And then
in
the
California, in LA and Anaheim, and they're
yeah, and
only
then you've
what, an
got
hour apart.
obviously the Clippers and the Lakers play in the same building, and they have two teams there. And then you got the Sacramento Kings, and then you've got like the San Diego Padres, you've got the Angels, the Dodgers, the A's for now because they're moving to Vegas because Oakland and San Francisco are shitholes. And you got the 49ers and the Raiders are in Vegas now, but they were here. And then you got the Chargers playing in the same stadium as the Rams. So, yeah.
There's
It's a
so
lot.
many
It's,
professional teams in
yeah.
California. It's
Um,
unbelievable.
yeah, it's a lot.
It's
And
a
I can
lot.
recite them by heart because it's California centric. Okay, well, we've been going for a little bit. So, do you have any closing thoughts on this episode?
No, tune in for maybe some solo episodes, and I would definitely caution everybody to tune in to the IHR amendments episode. It's going to be one of the most important podcasts that
I want to
we've
do
ever
a
done, for
conspiracy
sure.
theory corner, but I don't want to throw it at you. I really would rather discuss it with you if you would just listen to that Audible podcast I was referring to. Um,
Fine.
I'll pull
No,
the
that's
name up
fine. We
for
can
really
do that.
quick of it just so I can share it with everybody. Um,
Because I was going to dive into that conspiracy theory and then do it like on the conspiracy theory corner, but we could devote like conspiracy theory corner to that, just a discussion and kind of be
it is.
informational and then
Oh
discuss
my
it.
god, it was
It works for
so
me.
interesting, and I can't talk about any of it because you need to hear it for yourself. Um,
It's so good. I started looking into it and like hashtag look into it, and uh, I'm interested for sure. So it'll be the
it's
next
by John
conspiracy
Ronson.
theory
It's on
corner we do.
Audible, and it's called The Debutante, and it's about a woman who I'll just say she worked for the FBI or the ATF, and she knew some things, and she could have prevented the Oklahoma City bombing, but that's all I'll say. Because there's a lot of stuff
We'll
that's
get into it.
unknown, and there's a lot of interviews. This guy interviews people who were in the neo-Nazi movement, so it's pretty interesting.
Okay,
there's
you're
so
giving away
much.
too much now.
There's so much.
That's the
I'm
problem. You're giving
teasing
away
it.
too much.
I'm teasing.
You gotta hook them, dude. Like that's
I'm just
you gotta give the
so
hook. You know,
interested to talk to you about it.
like you said. Oh, she could have prevented the Oklahoma City bombing, and
Or could
you gotta
she
have the hook.
Was
That's
she
the hook,
lying? Mm.
right?
It's all
She's
very
probably
unclear.
lying. Who knows?
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll
We're
let you
gonna
go.
find
Have a good
out.
weekend. I'll talk to you later.
See you, buddy.